What did the enemy really think of the leaders who stood against them? In the heat of World War II, the minds of German generals were trained on more than just military tactics. They were analyzing, dissecting, and sometimes even admiring the Allied commanders. But what did they really think about the men they were up against? Were they seen as worthy foes, or were they underestimated? Today, we're diving deep into the thoughts of those on the other side of the battlefield. Welcome to Unveiling the Enemy's Mind. This is a journey into the complex relationships between German generals and their Allied counterparts during World War II. To understand the perspective of German generals, we must first look at the structure of their high command. The German military was led by a mix of hardline strategists, tactical innovators, and conservative traditionalists. And as the war unfolded, these men developed complex views about the men leading the Allied forces. Take Erwin Rommel, for instance, the legendary Desert Fox. Known for his brilliance in North Africa, Rommel had a deep respect for the American and British military leaders he faced. He saw them as quick learners, but often inexperienced compared to the seasoned German commanders. However, his most revealing insights came after the battle for North Africa. Insert quote from Rommel's memoirs or letters about his views on British and American leaders. Rommel acknowledged that despite their relative inexperience, the Allies were adaptive, learning from their mistakes. He even praised figures like British General Bernard Montgomery, whom he saw as a dogged and determined adversary. But there were limits to his respect. Rommel often thought Montgomery lacked the flexibility he himself prided in. Then there's the legendary George S. Patton, a man as famous for his bombastic personality as his battlefield victories. The Germans had a lot to say about Patton, not all of it flattering. The German generals saw Patton as a fierce, aggressive force, but they were often puzzled by his unpredictable nature. Insert quotes or anecdotes from German officers on their thoughts about Patton. German commanders like General von Rundstedt were astounded by Patton's speed and audacity, yet they underestimated his strategic mind. To them, Patton was a man who relied more on instinct than discipline, a risky gambit in war. But they also recognized his effectiveness on the battlefield. Despite the occasional dismissive comments, many German commanders knew they had to take Patton seriously. After all, a man who could move entire armies in days was not to be underestimated, no matter how brash his tactics seemed. Next up is General Dwight D. Eisenhower, the supreme commander of the Allied Expeditionary Force. The Germans had a unique perspective on Eisenhower, who stood as the unifying figure of the Allied forces, bringing together the often divergent interests of the United States, Britain, and France. On one hand, German generals saw Eisenhower as an excellent diplomat, a man capable of forging unity among the Allies. On the other hand, they saw him as cautious and overly diplomatic, a man who could never command the same respect as his more flamboyant counterparts like Patton or Montgomery. Insert quotes from German generals like von Rundstedt or Rommel, criticizing Eisenhower's leadership style. The consensus among many in the German high command was that Eisenhower lacked the decisiveness and battlefield aggression that they associated with great commanders. But this view missed one crucial element: Eisenhower's ability to unite a diverse coalition and maintain strategic focus despite the many personalities involved. What about the French leader Charles de Gaulle? To the Germans, de Gaulle was an enigma, a thorn in their side, but also a man they underestimated in terms of his political and military acumen. They viewed him primarily as a symbol of French resistance, but not as a serious military threat. But this perception would change after the successful Allied invasion of France. De Gaulle's leadership of the Free French forces and his involvement in the liberation of Paris made it clear to the Germans that they had underestimated the French leader. In the end, what the Germans thought didn't matter. What mattered was that the Allies adapted, overcame, and ultimately triumphed. The generals may have respected each other as enemies, but in the grand sweep of history, it was the unity and resolve of the Allied forces that led to victory. Thanks for joining us today on Unveiling the Enemy's Mind. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more historical deep dives, and let us know in the comments, which general do you think made the biggest impact during World War II?